by you guys.
Okay, okay, now it's recorded.
I'm calling this meeting of the CCS Executive Committee to order at 10:01 a.m. on Wednesday, June 9th, 2021. Beth, can we get a roll call, please?
Austin?
Here.
Hall?
Here.
Jacobson?
Here.
Leffler?
Here.
McNulty?
Here.
Murray?
Here.
Smith?
Here.
Present for CCS, we have Deborah Wishmeyer and Beth Stonebrenner.
Are there any additions to the agenda? Anything that popped up for you, Deborah?
No additions on CCS's end.
Okay. And as there is no public present, I will say there is likely no public comment unless you've received anything to share.
No public comment.
Excellent. So consent agenda. Does anybody have any questions or concerns, want to pull anything out, or does someone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second it.
So Kate and Pam, if we can get a roll call vote, please, Beth.
Austin?
Yes.
Hall?
Yes.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Leffler?
Yes.
McNulty?
Yes.
Murray?
Yes.
And Smith.
Yes.
Okay, moving on to business. We have the Innovative Development Partner Program. Did you want to share anything about that with us?
Sure. Go ahead and give a quick update on that. I have some good news to share with the group. In your packet, I had noted 5 libraries had volunteered to be our beta partners, but we actually got 7. So 2 more came in after I sent the packet out. So in addition to Algonquin, Cary, Des Plaines, Fox River Valley, and Northbrook, we also have Niles, Maine, and Lake Villa joining us as development partners or beta libraries. So our beta libraries, CCS will begin working with them at the end of July. We'll have a nice kickoff meeting, and then we will get the ball rolling with implementing our Vega instance at those libraries at high traffic OPACs within the library, and we'll begin gathering user patron feedback and begin our user testing and recruitment for that. I have another good update. CCS has begun working with Innovative on our Vega test instance that will be syncing against training. We requested that Innovative first create a training instance of Vega for us so that we can ensure everything goes smoothly before we create an instance that would be syncing against production. We want to make sure we don't see any performance impact on Leap and on PowerPack when this training instance is built. So they have begun working on that this week, actually. So we expect we'll have a training instance of Vega either by the end of this week or early next week. CCS will be receiving training from Innovative at the end of June. And then once we have all of sysadministration set up, all of the backend settings in place, we'll be able to share the training instance out with the library so they can kind of get their fingers in there and start testing and playing around with it. We are going to be upgrading to Polaris 6.7 at the end of June. As many of you know, we had initially planned to do this in April, but a bug was preventing us from upgrading. So we're a little bit delayed with that, but Innovative has built a patch that has effectively fixed that bug. We've tested it in training and it does work. So we're planning to upgrade to 6.7 at the end of the month. We needed that 6.7 upgrade in order to have our Vega instance synced against production. So now that we have that upgrade plan, we're able to get that production Vega instance set up probably sometime late July. We'll need that production instance for our beta libraries to use in the library at their OPACs. So again, when all of this is done, we'll have 2 Vega instances, one against training. It'll kind of be our testing playground for, settings and configuration, and then we'll have our production instance that will be live and syncing against our actual Polaris environment. So PowerPack and Vega will be simultaneously running and syncing against production. Any questions? Awesome. All right, that's all I got for that one, Sarah.
All right. I'm encouraged that we have had so many libraries sign up to be beta testers. Hopefully that makes the rollout. Hopefully that makes all the exploration successful and therefore the rollout easy.
we're very excited as well.
I know that we had talked a little bit about the race and ethnicity patron attribute at our last meeting. Did you have anything that you wanted to share about that? Any update?
Yes, we did have a media discussion at our May meeting. So I did want to update the group that we have officially contracted with Biz Lindsay Ryan to consult with CCS and with Evanston on both the values that will be contained in the race ethnicity drop-down menu, as well as implementation of that field at Evanston and rollout. So Biz has had an initial call with Evanston and with myself, and we'll be having a follow-up call next week to continue the discussions about the values that will be included. And then Biz will be presenting at the July 14th governing board. So she will be addressing some of the concerns that were brought up at the previous executive committee and at database management. So her presentation will begin with an introduction into EDI terminology and a discussion of why gathering race ethnicity data is important for organizations. And then she'll jump into some of the concerns that were brought up at previous meetings. That would include addressing staff biases, patron privacy, and then diminished trust in the library if we're asking patrons for this data.
Will we be able to chunk that training and save it as a separate training document to share with all of our staff? I mean, like, I'll be honest, like, regardless, like, I'll take the recording either way and do that for staff, but it would be super awesome if you guys are already planning to do that.
Yes, we will be able to pull that piece of the recording out. I'll just confirm with Biz that that's okay if we'll share that with staff who are not able to attend governing board. We've also just discussed a bit about, as makes sense, it's important that for other libraries who'd be interested in implementing this field, that there's an understanding that staff need to have training. So Biz is hopefully going to be working with us to develop an implementation plan that then can be adopted by other libraries outside of Evanston, if a library were to decide they wanted to begin tracking this data. And so we've talked with her about kind of chunking in some training materials as well to help with staff training.
Yeah, I knew that was part of it. I don't want to misinterpret your words. You said if staff are unable to attend. Are we saying that we could invite other staff other than the directors and alternates to come and attend that part? I mean, I know it's an open meeting, so like they can,
right,
regardless, but I think there's a difference between it being an open meeting and us encouraging that.
Yeah, I would say the presentation is meant for directors. And there will be an opportunity for Q&A at the end of her presentation as well for directors to ask questions. I think obviously, as you mentioned, it's an open meeting, so staff could attend, but the point wouldn't necessarily be that this would replace training for all of your staff.
I just am seeing it as like an additional piece.
Yeah, and
my staff are talking about it like a lot. So
we talked a little bit, Biz and I, and we're not there yet because we're focusing primarily on implementation first and then this governing board presentation. But CCS may contract separately with Biz to do an all staff training session after the July governing board.
Okay.
Or something that would be pre-recorded that we'd then be able to share. Mm-hmm.
That's great. I think these topics are challenging, and I'm glad that we're addressing them here, because I do think that, like, we're doing a ton of EDI work at my library, but like there's only so much we can plan in-house and do. So it's great when we have partners that are doing that for different areas too. So thank you guys for doing this.
I just wanted to clarify one thing also. The questions that will be asked, when we fill out this form they're all going to be predetermined, and it's, libraries can decide whether or not they ask them, right?
I'm sorry, can you clarify, Sarah?
So I had one staff member who, has gotten some wind of this and was concerned about what kinds of questions we'd ask and would we be asking the right questions. And I just wanted to clarify that we're not coming up with anything. That's what we're hiring Biz for, is to come up with those questions.
And it's just one question, it's one field, and it will be a drop-down menu, so it's not free text.
Okay.
And we don't have to do it. We get to choose on a case-by-case basis, just like we did with the driver's license number.
It's one of those things that seemed very clear to me until somebody asked, and then I was like, well, that's not how I interpreted that information at all. And so let me just go ahead and make sure. Okay.
Yeah, so it'll be one field, a drop-down menu, and for initially upon implementation for every library except Evanston, all values will be disabled, except for one that would say not applicable in case staff accidentally want to pick something. So only Evanston will have the ability to complete a designated value in that field.
Okay, thank you. All right, next we have prospective member inquiry.
Yes, it's been a busy few weeks at CCS. I did receive an inquiry about CCS membership pricing from the library at the Botanic Garden. So I did want to update the group that we received that request. Rebecca had directed CCS to just let prospective members know we'd be not taking new requests or working with new libraries until the fall. However, I did share some preliminary CCS pricing with the Botanic Garden because they had questions about whether it was a sliding scale, etc. So I shared the minimum and maximum values CCS libraries currently charge, and they did note, not surprisingly, that pricing model is quite out of range for them. Their overall budget is $250,000. So based on our current pricing model, CCS membership fees would be over like 20% of their budget. So it wouldn't be out of reach. I did encourage them though to reach back out to CCS for a quote if they're interested in pursuing membership in the fall. And I did tell her that I would bring this to this group as well to see if you had any further guidance or questions.
I mean, I think that it gets to like kind of who we want to be as an organization. I mean, this is a very cool library that is near many of our member like it's smack dab in the middle. I know there was a school in Park Ridge. Oh no, it was that part of the hospital. And it was like very tiny. I guess I'm wondering if it makes sense in the fall to look at whether or not there is value outside of just volume that people would bring to give people access. You know, this presents, I feel like, a unique opportunity. And is there a way when we're looking at, I mean, the pricing, I've been working on, you know, and I know Pam can speak to this with ECC, applying a pricing model to all types of libraries is challenging. And so could we look at whether there needs to be a pricing model as we have it for public libraries and separate pricing models for other types of libraries? And is that work that we would want to take on with the other work that is going on right now? Is that something we want to pursue as an organization? Is there enough value in bringing in different types of libraries, which we are required to be open to as part of our LSAP grant? But is this something that we want to be more conscious and strategic about? And I don't know what the answer is, but I think it's worth a conversation in the fall. I keep saying fall because Rebecca and Deborah doesn't need to add anything else onto her plate right now.
Yeah, I think that's important to note as well. What value would this add to CCS membership and to the library community as well? Obviously, Rails encourages multi-type library consortia. That is a metric used in the LSAP grant. CCS currently doesn't have any non-public libraries, so we're not a multi-type like some of our other LSAP consortia. But again, with the lowest fee for any CCS library being $55,000, that would just be far, far out of reach for a small special library like the Botanic Garden. Yeah, unless we offered like a tiered where they could be more of a union list member rather than a fully participating member, similar to what Prairie Cat
has done. I know Swan is all full, I think, right, Pam? I feel like that's accurate. Yeah.
Yes, that is accurate.
So, but I think that that's another opportunity to look at things.
I do know we have a lot going on, and I would
Yep.
also like to see us at least talk about this a little bit more in the fall, because I do, I mean, I've been in other consortium where they are multi-type, and it does, I do think there is some value in that. So I would like to see us at least talk about it on a little broader scale and see if, that's something that we want to pursue, some kind of tiered membership or something like that. But
Yeah.
certainly that can wait till the fall, but I would be very interested in pursuing that as well.
And it sounds like the Glencoe Public Library is already the Botanic Gardens sort of hub or location for Rails resource sharing. So they're already have a relationship with one of our libraries.
I think it's, I agree with all the comments made already. I think it's important to investigate. I would be curious to know too, what benefit the Chicago Botanic Garden feels they would get from being a member of CCS with 28 public libraries.
I
I
agree.
don't know what it is, but maybe
Yeah.
they see something that I'm not seeing yet, or
I agree. I see us borrowing from their collection more than they would necessarily borrow from ours.
Did they indicate, Deborah, what kind of prompted their interest in joining? Just curious.
Yeah, so they did say that, again, they're just in these very early stages of investigating their options. But their primary reason is they want to expand access to their own collections beyond their member base.
I can speak to this a little bit more because I've talked to Leora about it. Not about joining CCS. That was actually pleasantly surprised. I was like, oh, cool. I didn't even I should have thought of this. But so they have, of course, taken a huge hit with the pandemic. They've also done some major restructuring, and the library budget has been negatively impacted by some of the decisions the Botanic Garden as a whole has taken. And so when I've spoken with Leora in the past, about this, it has been about kind of expanding the knowledge that this service exists, kind of shining a spotlight, making it more readily available. I think it's a strategic direction that she's going in order to amplify the great services, in order to protect future funding cuts potentially, would be my guess based on our conversations. So.
well, I think it's worth investigating. I think, I concur with everyone else. Fall is the better time to do it, especially if they're still in the early stages too. They may be investigating other options, and maybe we'll all circle back around it at some point later. Anything else for that about the prospective member inquiry? You're ready to talk about COVID.
Ready.
Thing, despite what people in Colorado think.
So at the last meeting, we had a meaty discussion about how CCS wants to move forward with in-person versus virtual meetings. At that time, we had decided that it was recommended that July governing board would continue to be virtual, and that we would revisit whether the October governing board would be virtual or in person later in the summer in August. So since then, we have had some changes in Illinois phase levels. So we'll be moving into phase 5 this coming Friday. And as noted in the packet, the disaster proclamation was reissued in May as we had expected. It was renewed until I believe June 26th. But with Illinois entering phase 5, there's some question of whether it would get extended again beyond the end of June. So this group, I think today, if we could make some sort of decision on how we would want to move forward with in-person versus virtual for governance committees.
So our next next governing board meeting is in July, right? And I believe we had discussed at the time, not knowing what the governor's order was going to be and how long it was going to be extended, that we would have the July meeting virtually. I'm still on board with doing that. I know I will not be the decision maker at that time, but I'm still on board with having the July meeting virtually, and then October would be the next governing board meeting where we would perhaps try to have that in person, as long as there is a library that has a large enough space to accommodate all of us with, not necessarily shoulder to shoulder, and feels comfortable having that number of people come in and use their meeting room, when I know most of us are not allowing meeting room use or in-person meetings for large groups at this time. But by October, that might be different.
And we did ask, because Mick had offered at the last meeting, Lakeville did just reserve the October meeting date for their meeting room. So we will have a space if we do decide that one will be in person.
But of course, July might need to be. I feel like we need to plan for both remote and in person. I think that we should reach out to Jeannie and Alex. This is totally self-serving. I want to see their projects and see if they're willing to host. And then I think it's a matter of following the protocols that they have in place at their library, right? Whether it's still, masked 6 feet, masked 3 feet, unmasked for, vaccinated. I mean, I feel like we might not have a choice if they don't extend the disaster proclamation past June 26th. So we have to plan for both.
Right. I think we had said, though, that whether or not it was going to be extended, we were going to do July remotely anyway. And there was
Did we say we were going to ignore the OMA? Oh, Beth is nodding. Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
I'm on board with that.
was
I'm
worded
fine with
as-
that.
I don't think it was worded as ignoring the OMA. I think it was more the concern that that there might not be enough time to give notice to governing board, then the directors, and finding a library within such a short amount of time. I think there was more concern with giving directors plenty of notice when you're going to start moving back into in-person.
Yeah, that we wouldn't be able to find a library that allowed us to keep, to comply with some of the other continuing regulations like social distancing when we can and that sort of thing. So I think that's part of the reason as well that we were going to keep July virtual.
But then
I kind of,
I
oh,
think
go
we
ahead.
having
Sarah.
August executive committee starting to meet in person, since it's a smaller group, and using the training space at CCS, because it's a bigger area where people would spread out more. What were you going to say, Pam?
So basically I was going to say, so July would be remote, and then August, July governing board would be remote. August executive session would be in person at CCS.
That was what I understood from our last discussion.
And then committee meetings. So I think Deborah was asking about that too.
So I feel like one of the things that came up when we were talking about it before was that everyone really liked having the committee meetings be remote because it fostered more participation, right? It was easier for people to participate. And I don't know, that was kind of what I got out of that discussion, but.
The only
I've heard from some of my staff, I've heard that that's been very helpful for them to not have to go to the meetings.
To travel, yeah, my staff as well.
Unmuted. The only governance committee meeting we would have before August executive committee would be budget and finance. They would be meeting July 8th. So at this time, we would plan that would be virtual. And then there aren't any subcommittees or governance committees scheduled for before October. So really the only other committee again would be budget and finance. And then CCS plans at this time that all technical groups and advisory groups would remain virtual until the end of the calendar year. We have received some feedback that staff like virtual meetings over in person because they're more accessible, it's easier to attend. It doesn't take up 4 hours of your day. So, I'm envisioning we'll send out some sort of poll to library staff to ask what their preference would be. We don't want to make an assumption everyone wants to go back to in person and driving an hour to some of our farther out locations. So for those committees, we'll stay virtual through the end of the calendar. But CCS does have space here for executive committee to meet in our training space, as Sarah noted.
I think that all.
go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I just said I think that all sounds reasonable, but I'm curious to hear what you have to say.
No, I was just going to say too, I don't know, I mean, beyond saying that like technical groups and stuff will stay remote, at least through the end of the year. I'm not really comfortable planning out past October because, once everything opens up again and kids go back to school, I think if we can plan through October, at least for like executive committee and governing board, that's fine. And then we'll just continue to look at things and evaluate where we're at in terms of COVID cases and if we have to take a step back or whatever. So, I feel like if we've got a plan through October for our groups and then a plan through the end of the year for the technical groups, I feel like that's good for now. Is kind of my thinking.
The one thing I do feel very strongly about is that if it's virtual, it needs to be 100% virtual. If it's in person, it needs to be 100% in person. Doing hybrid meetings is not fun or good or ultimately long-term the best way to do it.
100% agree.
Yep.
All right, so for CCS, we'll keep July governing board and July budget and finance virtual, and then we will plan for August executive committee to be hosted at the CCS office as well as September, and then we'll host October governing board at Lake Villa at this time. And then if the situation does change at some point in the fall, we can revert back to virtual if needed.
Sounds good. Okay. Any other discussion about that? All right, then we are ready for reports. Cruising right along. As president, I don't have any other report other than to say that it has been certainly an interesting year, but also very enjoyable year. And I appreciate that you all put me in this position. It has been much more fun than I had anticipated. And it's been great getting to work more closely with all the CCS staff. So I know I have another year on executive committee, but for anyone who is, I know maybe you all don't need to hear it as much as other people, but I would say for anybody who is not certain that being president is a position for them, I would say it's not nearly as intimidating as it may sound. So sign up when it comes to be your turn, right?
Yeah, Rebecca and Beth and Deborah do like all of the work. You just have to run the meeting, basically. It's pretty sweet, actually.
Okay. Diane, do you have anything as secretary?
No, I have the executive session minutes. I'll be getting those back to Beth this week.
Okay. And Anthony as treasurer.
It's actually Mick who's treasurer.
Oh, and Mick is
I know,
treasurer. Sorry.
Bearded white guys with glasses all look alike. But that's okay.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Yeah, that's fine. No report.
I was used to saying Andy as treasurer, and so then just Anthony was first one to come to mind.
It's okay. We forgive you, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Figure if I'm going to mess something up, I might as well do it in the last meeting. Committees and groups. Do we have anything to report for committees and groups?
I will just note that budget and finance would be meeting in July, as I previously mentioned, and they will be discussing how CCS would like to distribute the Rails LSAP grant moving forward. So they will meet again on July 8th, and then we'll have their recommendation for approval at the governing board meeting in July.
All right. And Deborah, do you have anything more to add for acting director report?
Can I ask a question on one of the committee reports? Sure. Okay, so with the UX advisory group, super exciting. Is that going to be all of the patrons, or is it just a subset of libraries that will be tested with?
For notices,
Mm-hmm.
It was a subset of libraries. We had asked previously for volunteers to participate in notice testing. I forget which month, it was a couple months back. The process has been spanned a few months. So those
That's great.
libraries that previously had volunteered to participate are the ones.
We'll do the prototyping. Okay, great. So we don't have to worry, like if we were not one of those, that's going to be something that our patrons are going to be like, what is this? And yeah, okay,
Yes,
great.
correct.
Okay. Do you have anything, Deborah, for acting director?
I do not, unless anyone has any questions for anything that was in the report I had shared.
I do not.
All right, going once, twice, no questions.
All right. Well, if that's the case, then I am going to adjourn this meeting at 10:32.
Woohoo.
Nice and snappy.
Yeah, thanks.